أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، بارئ الخلائق أجمعين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا، أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد
وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين، روحي وأرواحنا لتراب مقدمهم فداء. فقد قال الله في كتابه المجيد: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. مثل الذين اتخذوا من دون الله أولياء كمثل العنكبوت اتخذت بيتا، وأن أوهن البيوت لبيت العنكبوت لو كانوا يعلمون. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
اللهم صل على محمد
For the hastening of very parents of our Imam, please recite a louder salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد
So we can be the first to greet the Imam upon his return, the ones who respond to his call without needing to hear his call. Please recite the loudest of salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. What we were talking about and discussing last night was that there was this phrase, a portion of a hadith from Rasulullah when he's talking to Imam Ali and telling him a few things of what to do and what not to do. One of the things that he mentioned was وَأَنَّا تَرْكَنَا إِلَى ظَالِمٍ وَإِنْ كَانَ حَمِيمًا قَرِيبًا. Do not incline towards an oppressor, even if this oppressor is someone who is supporting you, someone who is close to you. We talked about how the first and closest of oppressors that we find are ourselves. I mentioned the dhikr yunsi of Subhanaka inni kuntu minal zalimeen. That I'm the one who's the oppressor. I'm the one who's done oppression on myself. Every sin that we do, everything that we take that wrong side, I'm the oppressor. And so the first one that we need to cut off relations with is this lowly self of ours. And that's something that is first in a primary sense, not first in a time-wise. Because if I'm saying that I'm going to spend, my whole life doing just that, and only when that's done will I look outside of that circle, well then I'll never be done. Right? It's a lifelong journey. That's first in terms of importance, in terms of primacy, but not first in terms of timeline, that if I'm doing that, I can't do anything else, or shouldn't be looking at other oppressors. There are plenty of other oppressors too, that we can see. In this day and age, we see it very clearly. The oppressors that are attacking, whether they're attacking Gaza, attacking Iran, attacking other places, the Zionist regime, there's no question of their oppressing. Even in America, there's no question in its oppressiveness. It's not something of a matter of debate, I think, anymore. I think it's absolutely clear. We need to also make sure that we have no inclination towards them, that we don't think, well, they make life easier for me, so I'm good with that. They give me so many, because I live here, because I, benefit from their products, from their, the welfare that they have, from the opportunities, from all of these things, from their economy, that means that I owe them. You know who I owe? I owe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's the master. He's the owner. Anyone else, if their will, if what they're doing is going against him, I don't owe them anything. We have to have that disassociation from the oppressor. If, that's almost like the most clear message that's resounding from Karbala is this. That if there's an oppressor who's working against the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then I have to cut off my relationship. I can't support them. I can't help them. I can't show any allegiance to them. If that was permissible, then why would Imam Hussein hesitate? He would have just given allegiance to Yazid. If it was okay to incline towards the oppressor and accept what they're doing, then that's what he would have done. Very clearly, he's saying that that's not allowed. It's not possible. If we're taking those same steps, we have to identify those same people that hold those same principles of the Yazid, that Yazidi movement, the Taghuti movement, the movement that's going away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and say, I disassociate with that. Not just say it with my tongue, but with my actions. I cannot be a part of it. Now, this is something that naturally, if you take it to its ultimate conclusions and apply it in your life, should raise a lot of questions. A lot of questions. Now, I'm not going to go and answer the questions in this speech because I don't think it's proper. Sometimes, we have this idea that whenever someone speaks and tells us something, they should be giving us the full message from beginning to end, everything in one package, and then I can just take it. But there's a process in learning, whether it's me, whether it's you, or whoever it is, that I have to come up with the right questions first. That me thinking about it and coming up with the right questions and then asking that question is much, much more important than just hearing the answer. Simple example is our religion. Our religion of Islam, of Tawheed, is the ultimate answer to every question you have. Every question you and I have. Everything that we're troubled with, everything that we're disheartened by, everything that we need comfort for, Tawheed is the answer. But if I don't frame the question properly, I'll never realize that answer is the answer to my problems. If I don't approach and actually ask, then the answer doesn't mean much to me. We're like the fish that's swimming in water, never realizing the benefit that water serves. If I never wake up to realize, to ask, what is it that I'm using this for? What is it that it benefits me? How is it that it helps me? And I never really answer that question. It never really means as much to me. But what I do want to talk about for a few minutes is where can we, at least on a theoretical basis, seek refuge? If we have problems, if we have difficulties, if we're looking at these times, the troubling times, where do we seek refuge? Where do we see our safety? There's a hadith, a very famous hadith that Imambargah alayhi salam narrated when he was going towards Fus, when he was on his way there. He stopped in the city of Nishapur, or around that city, and was, gathered around all the people, and they asked him to sort of give a hadith from his forefathers. And he presents this hadith where he has the chain of narrators being from each Imam to the previous Imam until it reaches Rasulullah, who says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this, La ilaha kalimatu la ilaha illallah hisni, فَمَنْ دَخَلَ حِسْنِي آمَنَ مِنْ عَذَابِ. That this phrase, these words of La ilaha illallah is a fortress. And whoever enters this fortress will be saved from the punishment of the hereafter. And then, as the story goes, that narration goes, as Imam Rada is about to depart and leave, he heads on his markab, his whatever he's riding, the horse, I don't remember if it's a horse or a camel. He goes on it, he's heading outside, and he turns back. He said there's conditions though. And one of those conditions is me. Meaning that this wilaya and having this proper authority figure is one of the conditions of entering into the fortress of La ilaha illallah. Now, what is this La ilaha illallah? Why is it so important? Why is it that it would protect me? Why is it a place of refuge? Why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describing it as a fortress? Let's take a minute to think about it. What do we do? What are we saying when we say La ilaha illallah? Again, the way that sometimes we treat it is a very, very simplistic thing. We say that, well, I'm just saying that there is no God but Allah. That basically, I'm only obeying Allah. I'm only worshipping Allah subhanahu. That's, in a nutshell. And it is, at its very core and simple nature, that. But what we don't realize sometimes is when we're negating all other gods, it's not necessarily just a divine figure that I'm negating. I'm negating any other source of emulation of authority over me that I take to be independent from Allah subhanahu. Anything. Whether it's my ego, my parents, social pressure, social structures, governments, whatever it is. I'm negating all of that. I'm saying none of that has any independent authority over me. None of that has any authority over me at all unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants it authority. It is only and only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala I turn to. If you think about that, then that becomes a lot more profound. It becomes a lot more meaningful. Because now all of a sudden I can apply that on my day-to-day life. If it's just a very abstract thing, La ilaha illallah, that I don't believe in any idols, I don't believe that there's a Zeus out there that's throwing down lightning bolts, I don't believe in anything like that, I just believe in Allah. If it's just that, then it's pretty abstract. It's just, one piece of information that I've accepted. And I can separate my life from that. It's not really something that impacts my life. But if I expand it to its true meaning, where I'm saying that nothing can influence me, has bearing on my life trajectory except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and from Him whoever He grants authority over, then now all of a sudden I can apply it. I can ask myself questions. When I make the decisions in my life, why did I do that? Did I do it ibtigha'a mardatillah, seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Or was it ibtigha'a mardat nafs, seeking my own pleasure, my own ridaya, my own satisfaction? Why is it that I do the things that I do? And I don't mean just by this. This should be absolutely clear from previous videos, but just to make it sure that's clear. I don't mean just by this what we do in jobs and education and these things. Even this majlis, as I'm sitting here, why is it that I'm here? And not the answer that we like to give. The easy answers that we have on the tip of our tongues is, we have the love of Ahlul Bayt in our hearts. We have the sorrow for Imam Hussein and the tragedy of Karbala in our hearts. Inshallah, that's true. Inshallah. But we have to ask, truly, is that the only reason that I do the things that I do? If that were the case, imagine this. Let's put ourselves in a theoretical experiment. If I could put myself in a situation, let's say that I'm, by chance, right, I'm in a situation where I live in a place where there is no other Muslim, there's no other Shia, there's no access to any majalis. It's Shab Ashur, the night of Ashur. I can't play any majlis on a video. There's no access whatsoever. What do I spend my night doing? Do I need someone else to witness my morning? Is it that I have to do it in a place where there's other people there as well? If it was true sadness was my motivation, then I would be sad regardless if anybody else was there or not. That would have no bearing on it. I'm not saying that you wouldn't feel like you're deprived, for sure. If I wouldn't have a majlis like this with people around me, obviously you feel that there's something less, you're missing out on something. The amount and what you can do when the other people are mourning with you is a lot more. It's a lot more powerful. It's a lot more moving. No one is arguing that. But the question is, would I mourn in the first place? Compare it, if you will. Compare it if I lost a dear one, a relative, a spouse, a child, something of the nature. No, if I lost one of those, do I need someone else to be there for me to mourn? Do I wait for an opportunity to mourn? Is it that my mourning comes out when only other relatives are there? No, it's a natural thing. I mourn. I'm sad all the time. It's a natural thing that happens. Sometimes, and again, this is me reflecting on myself. I'm not reflecting on anybody else. It's me for myself. I'm just posing a question that perhaps you can question yourself as well. But for me looking at myself, sometimes when I look at it, I see elements that maybe show that it's not really that hard stuff. Because otherwise I would be mourning at other times. You see, one of the great traditions of our great scholars, we've been mentioning stories of scholars, we'll mention another story later on, but is that they regularly held the majalis of Abi Abdullah Hussein throughout the year. Not just in Muharram. Every single Thursday. No matter what. Some to the extent that it would be Eid on a Thursday, they still would do a majlis. They still would get someone to come and recite the Masahib of Abi Abdullah Hussein. Okay? I'm not encouraging that specifically and saying that everyone should be doing that. I'm just saying that for them, the sorrow was that real that it didn't really matter what other thing was happening. They were feeling that sorrow and they wanted to express it. It's a natural thing. And this is something we should look into ourselves and ask, is our sorrow a natural sorrow or not? If it's not natural, then what? What's stopping us? Because it merits for us to be sorrowful naturally. There's nothing fake about it. There's no reason for us not to naturally feel sad. There's every reason. It is the greatest tragedy that has ever occurred and will ever occur. Why is it that I can't cry naturally? It's something that, again, I'm not trying to impose my questions onto you. I'm just saying for myself. It's a thing that troubles me sometimes. And perhaps it's a matter of reflection for everybody else as well. But this thing, if I'm truly looking at it, right, we were going back to that main point of La ilaha illallah. That is where I'm seeking this protection. There's a hadith narrated from Imam Hussein, where he says that, goes out to his companions. By the wording of it, it's difficult to tell by the wording of the hadith when exactly he says this, but it does say that he's talking to his companions. So don't know if this was during Karbala, before it, when exactly. As far as I know, I can't really place when it isn't being narrated from him. It says this, it says, Ya ayyuhan nas, ma khalaqa Allahu al-ibad illa liya'arafuh. That, people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not create His servants except that they might become aware of Him. فَإِذَا عَرَفُوا عَبَدُوا. When they become aware of Him, they worship Him. فَإِذَا عَبَدُوا اسْتَغْنَى بِعِبَادَتِهِ عَنْ عِبَادَةِ مَا سَوَاهُ. When they worship Him, they become needless through that worshipping of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of worshipping anything else. If we reverse engineer that means that if I'm not worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'm definitely worshipping something else. And it's not a 0 or 100, right? Sometimes we mistake that in our minds and say, well, I'm a Muslim, so I must be worshipping Allah. I pray, I must be worshipping Allah. But we think of it in like absolute terms. But it's not like that. There's a gradient. Right? We have very clearly in the Quran, right? Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, aminu. O you who have iman, have iman. There's levels. There's a gradient. And so if I have within me these elements of worshipping anything other than Allah, then I'm being chained by that. I'm being held back by that. This is the slavery of this world that Rasulullah came to break us free from. There's another verse in the Quran where describing the mission of the Prophet says that the Prophet came to يَضَعَ عَنْهُمْ إِصْرَهُمْ وَالْأَغْلَالَ الَّتِي كَانَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ. He came to relinquish us from the chains and shackles that bind us. It's not the chains and shackles of, physical things, or saying that, oh, you're now free to do whatever you want. Because right before that, in the very same verse, it says that He made halal the tayyibat and made haram the khaba'ith. So He made things haram. So obviously He's telling you not to do something. So it's not just free to do whatever you want. It's freedom from something, not freedom to. Freedom from the chains and shackles and the deception of this world. That this world is all that there is. That this world is what matters. That is the fortress of La ilaha illallah. That it protects me from being enslaved by this world. It protects me from being enslaved by my nafs, by social pressure, by peer pressure, by even my intellect at times. And that is what Islam is constantly pushing us towards. Now, this act within Islam of going towards La ilaha illallah and testifying to it is not something on the tongue. It is good to say on the tongue, and we do say it constantly through various du'as, through various ayat of the Quran. It's reflected time and time again through our prayer. It's something that we do say often, and we should say often. But more important than that tongue is the action. There needs to be that central focus that I can see within my life, that my life is heading in that direction. That if I ask each question, a question of each action in my life, why is it, what direction is it heading towards? I can answer this heading towards Allah. And again, the difficulty of these kinds of discussions is that we take it either to be very abstract. And so I say, what does it mean for me to do my job, qurbatan Allah? What does it mean for me to do, walk down the street, qurbatan Allah? How can I drink water, qurbatan Allah? How can I do this, qurbatan Allah? That's one question to have. And sometimes we make excuses for ourselves too. But without even thinking about the complicated things, or maybe the very small, minor actions, maybe we'll have difficulty connecting the dots with that. Major things. Major life decisions that we make. When I decide that this is my job, when I decide this is my occupation, when I decide this is how I'll raise my children, when I decide this is where I'll live, when I decide this is what cause I will stand up for, am I asking what is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from me? That's something we have to be asking. Beyond that, sometimes, as we've talked about before, we imagine our religion to be a matter between, a private matter between me and my Lord. It's something that only is between me and my Lord. Nobody else really can talk to me about it. Nobody else can really, force me to do anything. Nobody really can sort of tell me anything about it. It's just me and my Lord. It's a private thing. It's in my heart. Why do you care? Why are you telling me to do this? Sometimes we react like that. We think like that. Islam doesn't view religion in those terms. In fact, as we talked about before, with the context of Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy anil Munkar, I own a part of your lives, and you own a part of my life. The mu'mineen are not separate. They're not living compartmentalized lives. My life and how I live it affects you and your life. If I'm doing the right thing, it's 10 times easier for you to do the right thing. If you're doing the right thing, it's 10 times easier for me to do the right thing. If you do the wrong thing, though, then all of a sudden becomes so much more difficult to do the right thing. And vice versa. I'll be held accountable for that. That means I own a part of your life. And you own a part of mine. We need to be that mutual support for each other, even if it requires difficult discussion. This idea that I can be friends with everyone and keep and maintain my relationships with everyone, no matter how religious they are, is not an Islamic concept. Naturally, I'm not saying it's a forced thing. I'm not saying this happens by you having to insult someone or be disrespectful to someone. None of that. Naturally, if I keep to my principles, someone who does not have the same principles as me will be preferred. We see this most clearly in the life of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam.
اللهم صل على محمد.
Most clearly. Both his enemies were the greatest and his lovers were the greatest. It's not the case that his enemies thought that he was, some fake person or didn't know who he was. It's because they knew who he was that they were his enemy. And we're not talking about the lay person in Sham who didn't really know who Amir al-Mu'mineen was and was just, taken by that propaganda machine of Muawiyah. We're not talking about them. His true enemies, the Muawiyahs, the Amr ibn As, those people, the very clear enemies that definitely knew him. It was because they knew him they were his enemy. So many of these Arabs at that time said that we have enmity with Amir al-Mu'mineen because he killed one of our relatives in either Badr or Uhud or Khaybar or Khandaq or wherever. Amir al-Mu'mineen is principled. He sticks to the principles no matter what. That's who we're trying to follow. That means naturally some people will not like us. That's okay. I'm not here to please everyone. In fact, I'm not here to please anyone other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If that means that someone, when they look at me in the way that I live, they don't like it, they don't find it comfortable to be around me, they don't feel as if, they can be my friend, well, that hurts. And, especially if it was someone that I was close to before, it's painful. But it's a natural thing. It has to happen. And naturally, what should happen is that the people I'm close to, in principle, should gravitate towards each other, regardless of any other difference. Any other difference, whether it's ethnic or nation or language or whatever it is, those shouldn't matter at all. Those shouldn't be the barriers that stop us from coming together. Distance shouldn't be a barrier that stops us from coming together. If it is the case that both of our hearts are going and traveling towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, well then none of those barriers matter. And clearly we see this reflected time and time again. Within the Quran, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say to Hazrat Nuh? That your son, laysa min ahad. He's not with your family. Don't consider him your family. He's chosen to be a mushrik, a polytheist. He's not part of your family. The ties that we have are built beyond blood. Blood is important, for sure it's important. It creates responsibilities and obligations on us. No one is saying to do anything with disrespect. Everything should be done with respect. Even if our relatives or friends or whoever it is are not religious or have gone against Islam, we still treat them with respect of their humanity, so that we can be the callers of Islam. Hadith from Imam Sadiq, كونوا دعاة للناس بغير ألسنتكم. Be the callers without your tongues. Call towards the truth without using your tongue. Use your actions, your wara', your salat, your all these actions that you have within your day. Those should naturally call people towards the truth. Who am I calling? And what am I calling them towards? If someone were to look at my actions of my life and say, you're calling to a certain set of principles, what are those principles? What is the direction that I'm calling the people towards? What is my akhlaq that I'm calling people towards? Is it the akhlaq of Rasulullah? Or is it something else? And this is something, again, like, it's so much easier to make real life-changing decisions when I have someone with me who's willing to do the same. If I don't have that support, then these discussions become extremely difficult to do. They come in one year, we nod our heads, we say, yeah, it makes sense. And then the next year we find ourselves doing the same thing. I need to find someone who will hold me accountable. And I make this vow in front of them that, look, I don't have to tell you, and we shouldn't tell each other our sins and the things that we do. That's something, again, this idea of confessing our sins before a human is not something in Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is He's the one who covers up our faults. We shouldn't admit our faults in front of anyone other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Other than a few cases where we need advice, when there's practical, real life ramifications, we're struggling with something that person, we need advice on how to get over it, that's a different thing. But just a thing like, I have a guilty conscience and I want to relieve my conscience. No. I can only relieve my conscience in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But still, I can do this. I come to my friend and I say, look, I have problems in myself. There's things that I've recognized. I don't want to tell you what they are, but there's things. Next year, Muharram, I'm making a vow to you that they'll be finished. I'll have dealt with them. They'll be gone. I want you to hold me accountable. I want you to periodically check up on me. Ask me, how are you doing? Do you need support? Do you need help? Test me, push me. Don't let me slide by with easy answers. I need to have that relationship with someone. Otherwise, I'm banking everything on my own will. And my will is weak. It's weak. That's the beauty that we see in Karbala, in Ashura, is that these companions helped each other every step of the way. It's not the case that there was never any sign of weakness. And we imagine in our picturing of the companions and even the family of Imam, that they never showed any sign of weakness at all. They were absolutely perfect and strong and no doubts. No, they had doubts. There were moments where they were discomforted, where they didn't know exactly what was the right thing to do. That's not the point. The point was that they quickly found that support within each other. That those fleeting moments of doubts were just fleeting moments. That they knew what they were heading towards. They just needed a slight reminder. They needed a slight push and they'll head back on track. We need that with each other. We need that. There's, as we've been doing for the past few nights, I want to mention one story of great ulama. One of the great ulama, this is sometimes, again, you see ulama sometimes when they've made Islam real to them, it reflects in every step of their lives. It reflects in what occurs in their lives. That every moment of their life becomes this communication between them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's not just, a secret thing that only they understood, but if anyone could see what's happening, anyone would understand that that's happened. One of these ulama is Shaheed Thani. We talked about Shaheed Awwal last night, yesterday. Today we talking a little bit about Shaheed Thani, the second one. Same place that he's born and raised, Jabal Amin in South Lebanon, current day Lebanon. Well, at that time it may have been started to be called Lebanon. At that time, one of the things that Shaheed Thani wants to do, once he's already gained a lot of knowledge, a lot of expertise. He's become a mujtahid. He's gone to Egypt and gained expertise in the qira'at of Quran from the Ahl Sunnah. He's had teachers there. It's again a strange parallel. The both Shaykh Awal and Shaykh Thani go to Egypt to learn from the Ahl Sunnah. Right? They learn slightly different things, but they both had that. In any case, he's turned back. What he wants to do now is that he wants to make a school in South Lebanon. At that time, that area is underneath the control of the Ottoman Empire. And so in order for anyone to make a school, they have to get permission from the Sultan in the Ottoman Empire. So he has to go to Constantinople. Constantinople is the capital of the Ottoman Empire. And so he has to travel to there. Now, the first place that he stops, which is, a main crossroads on this path, is Halab. Halab is where there's a lot of trade routes going through, and so a lot of the caravans that are going to Constantinople stop there. And so he goes from Jabal Aman to Halab. In Halab, he sees that there's various caravans that are going from there to Constantinople. And he has to decide which one to sort of, join. So he does an istikhara for each one. If we had time, we'd go through each verse that he went and came up in this. It's beautiful. But long story short, only one of them came out as good. The three other ones came out as bad. The one that he came out as good was going by a little bit of an unknown route. Wasn't really clear. It wasn't really the famous trade route that people usually go by. The other ones were going by the regular one. That was one problem. Second problem was that the one that it came good for was going a bit later. And he was in a rush. He wanted to go. And every day that the caravan kept on being delayed, kept on saying like, no, can't go today. For some reason, one reason or another, supplies, they weren't sure about the route, they're waiting for someone else. One excuse after another. So each day, he would do another istikhara. Say that, what about that caravan? Each time it would say no. And the ones that he would do one for the caravan that had said yes before. Again, things would come like, for example, "Wasbir sabran jamila," like have patience. Quran is speaking to him. Okay. Until finally that caravan, actually on the day, right, finally he did an istikhara on one final day for this caravan. And then the ayah came that said, this is the promised day that we have promised you. He thinks to himself, how crazy would it be if this is actually the day that this caravan would leave? And by the way, we know all this because this is in his autobiography. Syed wrote this himself. And so we have his autobiography, and this is him relating this story. And so he goes to find out. And sure enough, the caravan was leaving that day. As they go and travel, they go through various places. Eventually, they reach Constantinople. They reach Constantinople, and he talks to the people from the other caravans that he could have gone. And they all tell him, what a great thing that you went with this caravan. He said, there are two problems with us. One is that the path that we went on, there was problem after problem. There was rain that would fill the valleys. There was snow that would stop us from crossing the mountains. It was just a terrible journey. Second, because of certain shortages, whatever supplies we wanted were being sold 10 times the price. Now, Shaykh Thani was saying that on his path, they went through some lush jungle and gardens and things that he said that I experienced and saw fruits that I never even knew the name of. Like there were things that I had never before experienced. I didn't even know that there were fruits that looked like that. So barakat after barakat were coming from this. Now he reaches Constantinople, and while he's waiting somehow to get a meeting with the Sultan, what he does he's waiting for 11 days. In that 11-day period, he writes a book on 15 different sciences. A book introducing 15 different sciences. And he gives it as a gift to one of these, officers, not as like a bribery thing, that's the kind of personality that Shaykh Thani is. Just always in scholarly pursuit, wants to spread knowledge. Just give it. By chance, that person says that, what are you here for? He explains this whole story, what he's here for. He wants to get permission for a madrasa. He says, don't worry. Without even having to meet the Sultan, that person goes, gets approval for that madrasa. This is Shaykh Thani. Just one other story from his life. In the same journey in Constantinople, one of those days, he's going to, there's one of the graves of the companion of Rasulullah that's buried in Constantinople. And it's specifically buried there because this companion of Rasulullah heard Rasulullah say that there will be a companion buried in Rome who is of my closest companions and who will be protected on the Day of Judgment. And so he wrote in his will that if I die in this fight and battle against Rome, then I want to be buried there because I want to be that companion. So Shaykh Thani goes to visit the grave of this companion. As he visits this grave, something strikes his mind that, my wife was pregnant when I left. And probably this is around the time where she should be giving birth. And so he looks through the Quran and he comes upon the ayah. This is the ayah that comes up. It says, وَبَشَّرْنَاكَ بِغُلَامٍ حَلِيمٍ. We give glad tidings to you of a son that is, wise and knowledgeable. When he sees this verse, he records the date so he can check. So later on, when he returns to Jabal Amr, he finds that was the exact same day that his son was born. Now, one of the great things that you see from Shaykh Thani is that it wasn't all smooth sailing for him. There's a lot of difficulties. One of the greatest difficulties that he had, and probably one of the greatest difficulties that any person could go through, is this. He had 4 sons, one after another, all of them before the age of 15, passed away. Until this last son that he had, however, was the 5th one that lived. He's a great alim in his umr. He's known as Sahib al-Ma'alim. But these 4 sons passed away, one after another. Some were very young infants, some were a bit older. In response to his own grief, he writes a book called Musakkin al-Fawad, the sort of comforter of the heart. عند فقد الأحبة والأولاد, when you lose close dear ones and your children. So he writes a book to give himself comfort in his own heart. That's the perspective that he had. He didn't turn and think to himself, well, why is this happening to me? Why me? I'm doing my whole life in service of Islam. Everything I'm doing is to spread Islam. Why is Allah doing this for me? Why did he turn and return everything that I'm doing with this punishment of taking away my children? What did I do to deserve it? No, nothing at all like that. He gives himself comfort by telling, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. That's the mindset that he has. And again, through one reason or another, just like Shaykh Awwal, Shaykh Thani has an accusation put against him. He's killed. His body is burnt to ashes, and the ashes are spread in the sea. And again, what the great scholars we have in the Hawza, some of them have said that it's because of this that he does not have a grave, like Shaykh Awwal, that his books have been given barakah. His books have enlivened his memory. And that's why to this day, again, no scholar of Shia is there except that they study the books of Shaykh Awwal and Shaykh Thani. Their books are a must. The barakah that Allah has given in their books is beyond compare. Perhaps the only person that his books can maybe compare is Shaykh Tusi, if you compare the barakah given in books. But these 2 great scholars, their books are beyond compare. Not to say that Islam is stagnant and there's been no advancements. No, there's plenty of things. I have plenty of disagreements about what their opinions are and going beyond what their opinions are and disagreeing with them. No, point isn't that. Point is that they have a rich encapsulation of Islam within them, and they presented it in a way that bears mention. No matter if you agree or disagree, you still have to talk about it. That's the kind of Islam that Islam lived in that way, in that manner, that truly shows a life lived for that purpose. And that's the kind of life that we want to live. And that's the kind of life that we see reflected in Karbala as well. You see the companions. You see mothers preparing children. You see fathers preparing children. You see brothers preparing each other for going onto the battlefield and sacrificing everything for Abi Abdullah. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليكم مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Dear brothers and sisters, some people in the caravan of Abi Abdullah Hussein joined slightly later than others. One of those, or a few of those that we want to commemorate today are of that kind. The children of Abdullah bin Ja'far, Awn and Muhammad, don't start the caravan with Imam Hussein. They don't leave Medina with Imam Hussein. They, in fact, don't even join him in Mecca. Rather, when Imam Hussein is starting to leave from Mecca to Kufa, their father, Abdullah bin Ja'far, sends them with a letter to Imam Hussein. In that letter, what's narrated is that Abdullah bin Ja'far is telling his cousin, telling Imam Hussein that I don't think you should go to Kufa. I think that if you look to Kufa, they'll betray you. I think you should come back. Go somewhere else. But within that same letter, he says this. He says that if you continue to go, decide to continue, I'm not able to join you. But my two young sons, they're going to be my representative for you. They'll represent me with you in your cause. So take these two sons with you. As we know, Abi Abdullah Hussein continues towards Kufa. He does not take the advice of Abdullah bin Ja'far. Awn and Muhammad are young. They're young men. Don't know exactly how old they are. Some say 15, some say 12, some say 13. But they're not very old. They're young men. Think about the heart of Zainab for a moment. It's difficult enough to see your brothers go into battle knowing that they won't return. It's difficult enough to see grown men who are supporters and dear friends to your father, to your brother, to go into battle. But how does it feel to see young children that you raised? How can a mother's heart bear preparing her own children to go to battle? We see the night of Ashura. There are times that have been narrated where Zainab is uncertain and doubtful. But she's worried for Abi Abdullah Hussein. That's all she speaks of. Throughout all of Karbala, the event of Ashura, there's not a single time before the battle or after the battle. Zainab speaks to Abi Abdullah, her own children. She never mentions that to him. On the day of Ashura, a time comes when all of the Sahaba of Abi Abdullah have gone to battle and been marching. Zuhair is gone, Habib is gone, Burair is gone, Hura is gone. The time comes for the Bani Hashim. We know the first of the Bani Hashim is Ali al-Akbar. Think what Zainab does after the Shahada of Ali Akbar. She's the one who rushes out and says, Ya Ali, Ya Ali. She's the first to give comfort to Abi Abdullah. But when it comes time for Muhammad and Ahmed to go to the battlefield, they ask permission of their uncle to go. He tries to convince them not to. So no, perhaps they swear by the mother of Abi Abdullah to give them permission. They swear by Fatima to Zahra. Abi Abdullah finally gives them permission to go. These young children. But if you turn towards the tent, you don't see Zainab. Zainab's not looking, she's not watching. Every other time when someone became martyr, you would see Zainab there to help. But when Ahmed is martyred, Muhammad falls, you don't see Zainab there. Why Zainab? Perhaps Zainab would say, I didn't want my brother to feel ashamed of me. I had to see myself martyred before. When the news came back, Medina, that Abdullah bin Jafar, that your young sons were martyred in Zainabiya. One Ma'un says, this is the price that you pay for supporting faith. Don't you regret it now? Abdullah bin Jafar strikes him. He says, if I could, I would have been there myself. I would give everything for Abi Abdullah. My sons are nothing for Abi Abdullah. I will give everything. على لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. لا تنسوا